Listen carefully. This message is for the person who feels like nothing is working, the one who's been trying and trying and trying, but somehow it still feels like life isn't moving. Like no matter how much effort you put in, you're still in the same place. Maybe even worse. You look around, and it feels like everyone else is getting ahead. Doors are opening for them. Opportunities are finding them. Things are just working. And then there's you, waiting, questioning, trying to figure out what you're doing wrong. Let that sit with you for a moment, because that feeling right there, that frustration, that quiet confusion, that's where most people give up. Not because they're weak, but because they're tired of not seeing results. Tired of putting in effort and not getting anything back. Tired of believing something is coming, and it never does. And if we're being honest, at some point you started wondering, what if it's just not meant for me? What if all the dreams, all the goals, all the things you've been holding on to, what if they were never actually yours to reach? Think about that for a second, because that thought, that's one of the most dangerous places a person can sit in. Not failure, not struggle, but the belief that nothing will ever change. But what if I told you that what you've been calling a delay is actually preparation? What if the silence, the waiting, the closed doors, what if none of that was rejection? What if it was alignment? I know that's hard to accept, because when you're in it, it doesn't feel like preparation. It feels like you're being left behind. It feels like life is passing you by, while you're stuck trying to figure it out. But let me tell you something most people don't realize. There are seasons in life where nothing is supposed to work, not because you're failing, but because you're being built, and building is not always visible. Think about that. When a foundation is being laid, you don't see progress. You don't see the finished house. You don't see the beauty. You don't see the outcome. All you see is dirt being moved around. Noise. Confusion. Mess. And if you didn't know better, you would think nothing is happening. But underneath that surface, everything is being prepared. That's where you are right now. Not stuck. Not forgotten. Being prepared. Let that sit with you, because the version of you that's going to step into what you've been praying for is not the same version of you that started this journey. And that's why it's taking time, not because you're being punished, but because you're being transformed. And transformation is not comfortable. It's not quick. And it's definitely not easy. There's a story I want you to hear. There was a woman who kept applying for jobs over and over again. She had the degree. She had the experience. She did everything right. And still, rejection after rejection. At first, she stayed positive. She told herself, something better is coming. But after months turned into a year, that belief started to crack. She began questioning everything. Her worth. Her abilities. Her future. She would sit in her car sometimes just staring at the steering wheel, trying to understand why nothing was working. Have you ever been there? That quiet moment where you're not even crying anymore. You're just tired. Tired of hoping. Tired of believing. Tired of trying to stay strong. Let that sit with you, because eventually she stopped trying as hard. Not completely, but the energy wasn't the same. The excitement was gone. It felt like she was just going through the motions, and then something unexpected happened. One of the jobs she had been rejected from months earlier called her back, not for the position she applied for, but for something completely different, a role she didn't even know existed. Higher pay, better environment, more aligned with who she was becoming. And here's the part that changed everything for her. The person who got the job she originally wanted ended up leaving within months because the environment was toxic. The very thing she thought she lost was actually protecting her. Think about that for a moment. What if some of the things that didn't work out for you weren't losses? What if they were protection? What if the doors that closed were never meant for you to walk through in the first place? And if that's true, then that means something deeper is happening in your life. It means you're not being delayed. You're being directed. Let that sit with you, because everything starts to change you and you stop asking, why is this not working? And start asking, what is this trying to teach me? That shift right there, that's where growth begins. That's where clarity starts to form. And that's where your next level quietly starts to build. And the truth is, most people never get to that question. They stay stuck in frustration. They stay stuck in comparison. They stay stuck looking at what didn't happen, instead of understanding what is happening. Because growth doesn't always look like progress. Sometimes growth looks like stillness. Sometimes growth looks like everything slowing down, so you can finally see clearly. Think about that for a moment, because how many times were you moving so fast that you didn't even have time to reflect, time to understand yourself, time to recognize patterns, time to see what was really meant for you and what wasn't? Sometimes life will pause you, not to stop you, but to wake you up. Let that sit with you. Because clarity doesn't come from chaos. It comes from stillness. And a lot of what you've been calling nothing happening is actually everything being rearranged. There's another story I want you to feel. There was a man who poured everything into a relationship. Time, energy, love. He believed in it. He saw a future in it. He built his life around it. And then one day, it ended. No warning that made sense. No closure that felt complete. Just gone. And that kind of pain, it doesn't just hurt your heart. It shakes your identity. Because now you're not just grieving the person, you're grieving the future you imagined. You're grieving the version of life you thought was coming, and that kind of loss, it can make you feel like everything you invested was a waste. Have you ever felt that, like you gave your all to something, and it still didn't work, like you showed up fully, and still ended up empty? Let that sit with you. Because for a long time, he couldn't see past the pain. He replayed conversations. He questioned himself. He wondered what he could have done differently. And slowly, that pain turned into silence. He stopped opening up. He stopped trusting. He started protecting himself in ways that made him feel safe, but also alone. And here's what he didn't realize at the time. That relationship didn't just end something. It revealed something. It showed him the parts of himself that he had been ignoring. The boundaries he didn't set. The things he accepted that he shouldn't have. The way he gave so much without making sure it was being returned. Think about that for a moment. because sometimes what breaks you also shows you. It shows you what you deserved. It shows you what you tolerated. It shows you what needs to change before the next chapter begins. And over time, he started rebuilding. Not fast, not perfectly, but honestly. He started choosing himself in small ways, speaking up in small ways, paying attention in ways he never had before. And eventually, he met someone new, but this time, he was different, more aware, more grounded, more aligned. And the connection felt different, too. Not rushed. Not forced. Just right. And in that moment, he realized something that changed everything. If the last relationship didn't end, he would have never become the person who could recognize this one. Let that sit with you. Because what if some endings in your life were not taking something from you, but making space for something better? What if the heartbreak, the disappointment, the things that didn't last, were never meant to stay, not because they weren't real, but because they weren't final. And if that's true, then your pain has purpose. Not random. Not meaningless. Purpose. The kind of purpose that shapes you, the kind of purpose that prepares you, the kind of purpose that positions you for something you can't even see yet. And I know it's hard to trust that when you're in the middle of it, when you don't have answers, when things feel uncertain. When it feels like you're walking through something without a clear direction. But let me ask you something. What if clarity doesn't come before the journey? What if it comes because of it? Think about that. Because we all want to see the full picture before we move forward. We want guarantees. We want certainty. We want to know it's going to work. But life doesn't operate like that. Growth doesn't operate like that. Transformation doesn't happen with full understanding. It happens through experience, through moments you didn't expect. Through challenges you didn't plan for, through lessons you didn't ask for, but needed. Let that sit with you, because the version of you that's going to step into your next level is being built right now. In the uncertainty. In the waiting. In the moments that don't make sense. You're not behind, you're being developed. And development takes time. It takes pressure. It takes stretching. It takes moments where you feel like you don't know what you're doing, but you keep going anyway. That's where strength is formed. Not when everything is easy, but when everything is unclear and you still move forward. And that's the part most people never talk about. The quiet strength to keep going when nothing feels certain. Not when you're motivated, not when everything is working, but when you're unsure and you still decide not to quit. Think about that for a moment, because strength isn't loud. It's not always visible. It's not always something people recognize. Sometimes strength looks like getting up and trying again when you don't even feel like yourself anymore. Sometimes strength looks like holding on to a vision that you can't even fully see yet, and sometimes strength looks like sitting in the unknown without letting it break you. Let that sit with you, because the truth is, you've already made it through things you once thought you wouldn't survive. There were moments you didn't think you'd recover from, moments you didn't think you'd get through, but you did. You're still here. And that means something. That means there's something in you that refuses to give up, even when everything feels heavy. And that same strength is what's going to carry you forward. There's one more story I want you to hear. There was someone who had a vision for their life. Not just a dream, but something they felt deeply connected to. Something that felt like purpose, and they went after it. They put in the time, they made sacrifices. They stayed consistent. But nothing happened. No recognition. No breakthrough. No signs that it was working, and after a while, people started questioning them. Why are you still doing this? Maybe it's not meant for you. Maybe you should try something else. And slowly, those voices started getting louder than their own belief. Have you ever experienced that? When other people's doubt starts to sound like your own, when the outside noise starts to shake what you once felt certain about, let that sit with you, because that's one of the hardest battles. Not what's happening around you, but what starts happening inside of you. The questioning, the second guessing, the quiet fear that maybe it's not going to work, and for a moment, they almost walked away, almost gave up on something that once meant everything to them. But something in them paused, not a loud voice, not a big sign, just a quiet feeling, a reminder that they didn't start this for nothing, that there was something deeper pulling them forward, and instead of quitting, they adjusted, they learned, they refined, they kept going differently, and slowly things started to shift, not all at once, but enough to see movement, enough to feel like something was finally opening, and then one day, the breakthrough came. The opportunity, the recognition, the moment they had been waiting for. But here's what changed everything. When it finally happened, they were ready. Not just excited, but prepared. Prepared mentally. Prepared emotionally. Prepared to handle what came with it. And in that moment, they realized something powerful. If it had happened earlier, they would have lost it. Think about that. Because timing isn't just about when something happens. It's about who you are when it happens. Let that sit with you, because maybe the reason things didn't happen when you wanted them to is because you weren't ready yet, not in a negative way, but in a developmental way. You were still becoming, still learning, still growing into the person who could actually sustain it, because getting something is one thing, keeping it, that's something completely different. And life is not just trying to give you something. It's trying to prepare you to hold it, to maintain it, to grow with it. And that requires a different version of you. A stronger version, a wiser version, a more grounded version. That's who you're becoming right now, even if it doesn't feel like it. Even if it looks like nothing is changing. Even if it feels like you've been in the same place for longer than you expected. Something is happening. Something is shifting. Something is building. Let that sit with you. Because your life is not on pause. It's in process. And process doesn't always look like progress. But that doesn't mean it isn't leading somewhere. It is. Every lesson. Every delay. Every moment that made you question everything is shaping you into someone who is ready for what's next. And this is where everything begins to come together. Not all at once, not in some loud, dramatic moment, where everything suddenly makes sense overnight, but quietly, subtly, in a way that almost feels different. You start to notice it in how you think, in how you respond. and how certain things that used to shake you don't hit the same anymore. Think about that for a moment, because growth doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes you don't even realize how much you've changed until you're faced with something that used to break you, and now it doesn't. That's when it clicks. That's when you start to understand you weren't stuck, that you were shifting. Let that sit with you, because everything you've been through has been shaping you into someone new who can move differently, who can see differently, who can choose differently, and that changes everything. The way you walk into opportunities, the way you handle pressure, the way you trust yourself, because now you're not just hoping things work out. You're becoming someone new who knows how to navigate whatever comes. And that confidence, it doesn't come from things going right. It comes from everything you survived when things went wrong. Think about that, because the pain you experienced, default text didn't just hurt you, it built you. It strengthened parts of you that didn't even exist before. Your patience, your awareness, your resilience, all of it was developed in the moments you thought were breaking you. Let that sit with you, because if you remove those moments, you remove the growth, and without that growth, you wouldn't be ready for what's coming next, and something is coming next. Even if you can't see it yet, even if it hasn't shown up yet, even if you've been waiting longer than you ever expected to, that doesn't mean it's not on its way, it means it's aligning. It means it's being prepared at the same time you are. Because timing is not just about you, it's about everything connected to you. The people, the opportunities, the environments, all of it has to meet you at the right moment. Not too early, not too late, right when you're ready. Let that sit with you, because you've been focused on when, but life has been focused on who you're becoming, who you need to be, who you must grow into, to fully step into what's ahead. And now, you're closer than you think. Not because everything around you has changed, but because you have your perspective, your awareness, your strength, and that shift, that internal shift, is what changes your external world every time. So now, instead of looking at your past as something that held you back, you start to see it differently. You start to see it as training, as preparation, as necessary, because without it, you wouldn't have the mindset you have now. You wouldn't have the clarity. You wouldn't have the strength to handle what's next. And that's the truth most people miss. They want the outcome, but they don't understand the process. They want the reward, but they don't value the preparation. But you went through it, you felt it, you endured it. And because of that, you're not the same person anymore. You're stronger, wiser, more aligned, and that version of you is ready, let that sit with you. Because everything is about to make sense. And that's better, that's deeper, that's lasting. So if you've been feeling stuck, if you've been feeling like nothing is moving, if you've been questioning whether it's ever going to work out, hear this clearly: you're not behind. You're not forgotten, and you're definitely not finished. You're being prepared every moment, every lesson, every experience, all of it is leading somewhere. And you're closer than you think, so don't give up now. Not when everything you've been through is about to start making sense. Not when the version of you you've been becoming is finally ready to step forward. Stay with it, trust it, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's unclear. Because one day, you're going to look back at this season and realize it was never holding you back, it was building you. Let that sit with you, and when you're ready, take that next step. Not because you have all the answers, but because you've become strong enough to move forward without them. And if this message reached you today, it wasn't by accident. There's something shifting in your life, something aligning, something preparing you for what's next. So stay connected. Subscribe to Voice Without Ego. Like this message if it spoke to you, and come back for more, because this is where you don't just listen, you transform.